So where we left off on the last video is we were talking about required reserves, the amount that the bank is required to keep on hand in case withdrawals would like to be made. We talked about how you found the loanable fund. The loanable fund is the amount of deposits in which a bank has minus the required reserves. This is the amount that a bank can loan out or they can sell to somebody else in the form of a loan. So these required reserves that banks are required to hold, they can hold it in one of two, or in two different forms. The first one is cash in the vault. So every good bank is going to keep cash in its vault. Why? Because you have to keep your customers happy. You have to keep your depositors happy. If you're a depositor and you walk into the bank that's supposed to have your money and you say, I would like to withdraw X amount of dollars out of my account, and they turn around and tell you, well, we don't have it because we don't keep cash in the vault, you're not going to be a very happy customer. As soon as you can get the cash, you're going to withdraw everything out of your account and no longer be a customer there. So banks will keep cash in the vault. The second way that they can keep cash or keep these required reserves is that they make deposits with the Federal Reserve System. So those are the only two ways that banks can keep required reserves. So here comes the tricky part. Bankers have no way of accurately predicting how much will be deposited and withdrawn each day. So this becomes a managing problem. You have to manage your required reserves. You have to keep a certain amount on hand. By order of the federal government, by federal regulations, you have to keep on hand a specific percentage of the amount deposited. But you want to loan out as much of these loanable reserves as possible, of these loanable amount. So, banks buy and sell money. And the flow of loanable funds into the banking system is a result of three basic motives. For safety, for convenience, and I'm not even going to try to say it. I don't really know how to pronounce that word. I'm sorry for that, but if you're watching this, just remember I am human and I cannot always pronounce every word properly. And for that, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that word. But for the first reason is safety. People prefer to deposit money in a bank that they trust rather than leaving large amounts sitting around the house. For obvious reasons. By putting it in the bank, you reduce the threat of theft. You reduce the risk of, say, something happening to the house, heaven forbid, it going up in flames, and there goes all of your money as well. So for safety reason, people prefer to deposit money into the bank. The second reason is convenience. So they go in and they have these demand deposits. These are going to be like your checking accounts, your debit accounts. Why is it so much more convenient to put money in the bank and have these demand deposits? Well, if you were having to pay your utilities, wouldn't it be easier to just write out a check and send it to all of the utility places rather than going in and paying cash to, say, the phone company, the lights company, the electric company, the gas company, to all of these utilities, the water bill? Rather than paying cash for all this, it's just easier and actually safer to write a check in a lot of ways. So that's the second reason why people demand it. And the last one, this word that I cannot pronounce, basically what it amounts to is people, whenever they put money in their deposits, or they deposit money, they hope of earning an attractive return. Why do people use certificate of deposits? Because they receive an interest on it, and they're expecting to have an attractive return coming off of the certificate, so they put money in the bank hoping to earn money off of it. So now we talk about the loanable funds. What happens? Rising interest rates encourage potential savers to put more money into savings accounts or to purchase certificate of deposits. If rates decline, savers would withdraw funds to employ them in some other, more attractive alternative. So, if we remember back from chapter 3, people work, or economics, one of the foundations of economics is self-interest. If there's a high interest rate on, say, a certificate of deposit, there's a high interest rate, then you're going to take your money, put in this certificate of deposit, and receive an attractive return off of it. That's if interest rates are real high. Well, what happens whenever interest rates start falling off? Well, you would be better off to take that money and put it in something like the stock market, hypothetically. And maybe it'll return a higher interest or higher amount on the investment. So, whenever interest rates are real high, like say they're up here, what you find is that the amount of savers, the quantity of savers, the quantity of money that goes into savings accounts will increase. The quantity of money that's getting placed in these banks actually increases. So what happens whenever the quantity of deposits into savings accounts and these time deposits increase? Well, that essentially means that there is more loanable funds. So, if, for example, we will go back to our example of $5,000 in the bank, and they're required to keep $1,000. If now the interest rate is higher, it's encouraging more people to place money in savings account. This now jumps up to $10,000. They're only required to keep $2,000. Here, they had a loanable amount of $4,000. And now, they have a loanable amount of $8,000. So, what's going on here? As the interest rates are rising, more people place their money into savings accounts and certificate of deposits, and there is now a higher quantity of loanable funds. If the opposite happens, if rates start to decline, say they come back down here, what we see is that as the interest rate has fallen, the quantity of loanable funds has actually decreased as well. Why? Because they figure they can take their money, place it somewhere else, and actually receive a higher interest or receive more money with their investment. Well, what about, that was the supply of loanable funds. Well, what about the demand for loanable funds? This includes the demand by consumers for funds to purchase goods and services, and businesses to take out a loan to build a plant or equipment. So the supply of loanable funds increases as the interest rates rise. Why? Because you can receive a higher return on it. But if you're demanding loanable funds, if you're the person that is actually having to take out the loan, you actually want a lower interest rate. So what we find is the quantity of loanable funds demanded by consumers is inversely related to the interest rate. So if we go back to this example, the supply of loanable funds is a positive or upward sloping curve, because as interest rates rise, the supply of loanable funds will actually increase. Well, if you're from the demand side and the interest rates are rising, now you want to actually take out less of a loan. Why? Because it now costs too much. The cost of that loan is now increased. Therefore, at a higher interest rate, you demand